Hello, my name is Dr. Drtredtv, and I am your host today on the Drtredtv, and I want to welcome you. It's going to be about a half-hour program today, and I'm going to talk about the immune system today. Your immune system is like the number one most important thing that you have to maintain your health, to protect you from germs, bacteria, to adapt to this environment, which can be quite toxic. I think everybody's kind of starting to see that. Just turn off my ringer here. And I always believed that the best way to defeat fear is with knowledge and understanding. And so you're not left in the dark about something. It seems so scary. And when I learned about the immune system in college, I had no idea how much time and effort and not just millions of years, billions of years that your body has been preparing for all of these germs and bacteria and attacks and toxins and dirt in our water and people sneezing on you and being together. I mean, we were meant to be together, and within each person is an immune system which protects them from each other in a sense. Yet without each other, we can't develop an immune system. So an immune system is a byproduct of humans interacting with their environment, with other things in the environment and each other, and the seasonal allergies, the seasonal allergens, the difference in the cleanliness of what we eat and what goes on us. Our immune systems are designed to handle all of that stuff. Okay, and I like to always explain that if you really knew how important and how effective your immune system is, you would never do anything to prevent it from working. I mean, without your immune system, you are done. You're toast. I mean, I remember that movie, The Boy in a Bubble, with John Travolta, and basically he was born without the immune system, and he lived in a bubble. It was a plastic room that kept him from people from going in and meeting with him because they told him, the doctor said that don't have an immune system, and one person can kill you, somebody who just wants to hug you. And over the years, he lived in this bubble. And as the bubble became more restrictive, he started realizing that he would rather take a chance with being infected than live without any interaction with people. He had fallen in love with a girl that was there to kind of make him feel better. And when he actually came out of the bubble, he found out that his immune system was fine and he didn't have to live in the bubble. And it was really through fear and through certain doctors and the persuasion of what they believed at that time. And it was just a very interesting movie to see. It was done in the 70s, The Boy in the Bubble, and I remember it. And since then, I have seen it again with light of this COVID and all the fear and all the masking and the separation and the 6 feet from each other. And it's a chilling tale to watch because you know again, I'm not here to contradict what medicine has been telling us and of avoidance, but again, a ship in harbor will never be hurt. It'll never be damaged. You leave your ship in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. They're designed to go out into the ocean and explore and to do things. And yes, it might be risky. So without understanding the basis of a ship and how they're designed to handle all of the rough water and to get you home and the way that they navigate and the choices you have, you can mitigate a lot of the risk involved with going out on a boat in the ocean. And for that reason, understanding the immune system and how it operates and what went into it, I think is so critically important because when you know what you have as your weapon, as your defense, And it's not something you had to pray for. It's not something you had to hope and believe that you would get. You didn't, when children are being made and that life force is put into the cells and develops a human, we all have the same organs. We have the same intelligence, innate abilities to heal for the most part. I mean, you're going to have some genetic changes, maybe of 1 or 2%, but nothing that warrants this kind of separation of us. So my goal here today is to explain the immune system to you and to give a little bit of knowledge about how it began and what you can do to keep it that way. And when you understand that this battle of our immunity, the life force which animates us wants to express itself through matter. Okay, so you can have your beliefs wherever they come from. I believe in a higher power, and it was intelligent, and it is the life force that animates my tissue cells, my body. There's a reason why I have life, and the table I'm talking to you doesn't. It's not going to repair itself. It's not going to grow new legs. It's not going to adapt when somebody spills poisons on it. I mean, it has no intelligence to do that. However, my body, who I am, has this intelligence, this life force. We call it innate, an innate intelligence. So we stay out of people's religious beliefs. But there is something that is very intelligent and it's been manifesting and perfecting itself since the beginning of time. Billions and billions of years ago, your immune system was started. And so that's going to be like the first thing that I really want you to understand here is that your immune system was developed billions of years ago. It's a fascinating journey, and it's been developed through a series of adaptive changes. Changes as life forms evolve and they encounter new challenges from pathogens. Whether it's challenging to provide a comprehensive history, I'm going to outline some very key evolutionary milestones and provide some examples of those early immune system things. Now, the definition of a pathogen is something that could be very beneficial for life, but in certain respects, at times, it can also make you sick. I mean, so the pathogen is not always something that makes you sick. It can be very normal until your body becomes weakened, and then it becomes a pathogen. So there's two parts here. There's the strength of the infector, the infection, or the pathogen, and then there's also the strength of your own body's immune system to respond and adapt to that. And that's what really determines a bad outcome or a good outcome from pathogens or any type of bacteria or virus or poison or toxin. How much were you exposed to, and how well is your body functioning to be able to handle that exposure? So, my belief is build your immune system, stop trying to destroy your immune system. So let's talk about that evolution. Now, it really began a very long time ago, and it's something called ancient immune mechanisms. And that would be the history of a prokaryote and a simple eukaryote. Now, a prokaryote is one of the earliest forms of life, and they are things such as bacteria, archaea, and these bacteria, these early prokaryotes and eukaryotes, faced threats from viruses and bacteriophages and other microorganisms. So bacteria and viruses have been fighting for rule of their kingdom since billions of years ago. So viruses are known to be particles of protein without a cell, without a membrane, without any way of reproducing life on their own. It's just a piece of protein. That's what is considered a virus. And a eukaryote is a bacteria that has a membrane, that has a cell wall around it, and it also has the DNA within it, and it can perform functions. It can replicate on its own. It doesn't have to have, it can split in two, and it can split in four, and it can split in eight, and this is what we call meiosis. That's a big leap in evolution from something which had no membrane, wasn't protected, couldn't reproduce itself, into being able to reproduce itself. And this is where the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes kingdom comes from. And so what happens is the bacteria faced threats from the viruses, and they call them bacteriophages, okay, which means they can destroy. And these organisms developed primitive defensive mechanisms, including restriction modification systems and something called CRISPR, CRISPR, CAS systems. And these systems are still present in modern prokaryotes. Now, what is really important to understand here is, why did the prokaryotes form this CRISPR? And so what happens is, CRISPR is not a mechanism. It's the ability of a bacteria to be able to take its DNA and put into that DNA a new gene to protect it from the antigen, whatever's making it sick. So the bacteria has DNA, which allows it to replicate itself through meiosis. And then what happens is, when it becomes infected by a virus, and it figures out a way of destroying the virus, of resisting it, whether it's a new, stronger membrane, whether it's more acidity, there's different ways that a bacteria can avoid these pathogens. That new act of defense is put into the DNA by a technique called CRISPR, CRISPR, and it's not invented by man. Man did not invent CRISPR. We use it today. In fact, that's how they make the mRNA vaccines. They're using CRISPR to cleave the bacteria and put in this mRNA. But the body has been doing this since the beginning of time, your cells. So, and then what would happen is, as the bacteria become resistant to the new strain of the viral particles through its adaptation, the virus learn another way to get into the bacteria. It adapts, it mutates, and then it starts coming in through another area of it. At that point, the bacteria will then adapt and evolve a new defense. And this has been going on since the beginning of time. So from those simple defenses and mutations in defenses, this is where our original immune system begins, billions of years ago. Okay? Now, so what happens is, once we get to this point, okay, so that's called ancient immune mechanisms. And these are early life forms develop basic defense mechanisms, including restriction modification systems and CRISPR-Cas systems. Now, a CRISPR-Cas system allows prokaryotes to recognize and defend against viral DNA by storing snippets of viral genetic material for future recognition and destruction, adaptation, increased immunity, more life. And this is early in our evolution of man. So after the prokaryotes came out, then you have these eukaryotes, eukaryotes, eukaryotes. And what eukaryotes are able to do, now these are one-celled bacteria, and the earliest ones we have are something called amoebas. Amoeba. And amoeba is a very large one-celled organism which can move through by putting little feet out. It puts little feet out to move. And then what it does is when it finds something that is pathogenic, it engulfs it, it surrounds it, and basically it digests it. And we call that phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. And that means to eat and destroy and engulf another cell. So eukaryotes, such as amoebas, develop the ability to engulf and digest smaller microorganisms or particles, providing a basic form of defense against pathogens. So from the CRISPR technology, where it actually created a different DNA profile to defend against these organisms and viruses, now we now have a one-celled creature which has a membrane, which has fluid in it, just like we do, and it also has the ability to engulf and to surround and move through tissue or through fluid and destroy those other pieces of microorganisms or particles. And this is a defense against pathogens. All right, so from there, this is before plants even were on the stage. Plants didn't exist at this point. This was more bacteria, viruses, and this is the beginning of life. So the next one would be the evolution of an immunity within the plant kingdoms, within plants. Because remember, minerals form dirt, and then from the minerals, the plants live on the dirt and they start to get their nutrients and their life from the dirt. But they're also subject to diseases and problems. So when it comes to the plant kingdoms, what happened is the plants, because they can't move around the same as an amoeba and engulf things, they had to evolve a production of antimicrobial compounds. Things like phytoalexins, which are toxic to many pathogens. And plants also have a very rigid cell wall. The cell wall of a plant has evolved and acts as a physical barrier, preventing the entry of many pathogens. So a plant's immune system has to do with the substances that it provides from internally to defend against insects, bacteria, viruses, and also the cellular structure of a plant, the cell wall, the cellulose, also prevents these things from coming into the plant. So for a plant to have proper disease resistance, it requires good nutrition. So that should be your first lesson. If you grow a plant in impoverished dirt and soil which has no nutrients in it, and it grows, it will be weakened by disease because it's not getting the nutrition that it was designed to get. And that leaves it vulnerable to these diseases and bugs and parasites and everything that destroys plants. And instead of giving plants better soil and better root systems and giving more energy, we decide to spray it with some kind of pesticide or chemical to try to destroy the bugs which are making the plant sick. And at the same time, we're also making the plant sick with the poisons. And that's how most farming handles toxins and poisons. That's how most farming industry handle pesticides and insects and disease, is they use chemicals to kill it, to destroy it, and hopefully without destroying the plant itself, instead of giving the plant the proper nutrition, the proper water, the cleanliness of the water, proper sun, all the things the plant needs to be resistant on its own. So that's your first lesson. Work on that nutrition in your body, work on getting enough water, work on being in as healthy of an environment as you can be, and your immune system will be stronger, just like the plant. All right. From plants, we go into animals. Now, we didn't jump from plants right into humans, okay? It was a long process of moving from plants to what they call fish and reptiles and things which basically lived in the water, okay? Our Earth was in water for billions of years. It's still 98% or something water, okay? We have very little land mass. It's mainly water. And the creatures that sprung up after the plants, remember the plants were in the water in the form of algae and kelp beds and seagrass, and these weren't plants that you would recognize today. And as a result of that, the smaller creatures started to form within this seawater. And seawater is full of viruses, by the way, and they're very beneficial. They're viruses which help the seawater to be healthy and to maintain proper oxygen, to maintain proper bacterial loads. It's symbiotic. Billions of tons of viruses are in seawater, and they were there from the beginning of time. And so, as a result of it, when the eukaryotes, which is who we're an ancestor of, they're our ancestors. Any brain and a DNA and a fluid-filled sac is pretty much what we're made of. These things started to develop within the oceans, and they had to develop an immunity also. And what happened with the animals, things like sponges, they developed a primitive immune response. And so what happens with a sponge, which was, they don't have a brain, but they manage to defend against germs and bacteria. And what they do is they do something called a cell aggregation. And sponges undergo cell aggregation in response to injury, which may help seal a wound. Okay. In other words, you can break a piece of sponge into 20 different pieces, and every piece will grow into a sponge. So if half of the sponge gets destroyed by poison, if there's a few cells down, it'll regrow again. So that's an immune system. That's a response. And I do know that fish, which came before us, that they don't have their immune system is dependent on the fish slime. The slimy coat that covers the fish is how fish protect themselves from disease and pathogens and toxins. And that's why if you were to ever hold a fish up out of the water, you're never supposed to touch it, its skin, or hold it, because it'll take some of that slime coat off. And when you go to release it, it's very vulnerable to getting sick. And fish, if you've ever owned an aquarium, like I have, a saltwater aquarium, when those water parameters start to drop, when it becomes poisonous, the water isn't being filtrated properly. It's too much organic matter is in there, and ammonia has built up from the fish poops. Your water flow is being restricted. There's not enough oxygen. That's when all those diseases start to affect your fish. And so, instead of poisoning the water to try to kill the diseases and you kill the fish at the same time, it's better to restore the nutrients, the oxygen flow, the filtration of the fish tank, so the fish are healthier. You are no different. Again, the same thing with plants that made them sick. By giving them good nutrition, they get better. The same goes with fish and other animals, especially those that live within the water. And as you go through the different animal kingdom, from from being in the water to crawling out of the water, and this would be your newts and your lizards that crawl out of the water. Now they're bringing the water with them. In other words, they don't have to stay soaking in the water like a salamander does. A lizard can come out of the water and it carries the water in their body. And this is a whole step in evolution of being able to not have to live in the water. And as a result of that, the immune system is now changing again within them. And what's happening in these higher levels of fish and amphibians, uh, you start to get actual lymphocyte lymphocyte-like cells, and antibody-like molecules called immunoglobulin Ig domains. So within fish, with cartilage, and amphibians, which are lizards and stuff, and snakes, they develop the first adaptive immune response. And we have an adaptive immune response. You have this general immunity, okay, and it's non-specific. And then you have one that is specific, and that would be the difference between the two immune systems. So innate immunity, or non-specific, is the body's first natural defense to any intruder. And that would be your skin, that would be white blood cells rushing to the area in mass. That would be the acidity around your mouth, the acidity in your eyes, the lysosome to prevent any bacteria from getting in. This is a non-specific innate immunity, which was very present right up until we started having fish. Everything had this non-specific immunity. But when the fish came around, we ended up they developed an immunity which is very similar to what we're carrying in our body today, which are cells and antibody-like molecules that are specifically produced in response to an infection or a disease. Whoops, sorry about that. My camera clocked out and I didn't catch it. So just to rehash, the evolution in fish and amphibians of our immune system has to do with sharks and their relatives developed the first adaptive immune response, which is different than the natural immunity, which is your skin and your temperature and things like that. Adaptive is something that when you're exposed to something, your body will adapt to it and create a new immunity. That's called adaptive. And that would be lymphocyte-like cells and antibody molecules called immunoglobulins. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Ig, immunoglobulins. Now, amphibians, frogs, for example, they continued to refine their immune systems with adaptive components, including antibodies. So there was no antibodies earlier in life before the frogs. Remember the fish had the slime coat that protected it, and the plants got protected by the poisons that they could produce to keep things away, and also their cellular structure. Now frogs, they can produce antibodies. Now that's a leap in evolution, because with antibodies, now you can develop antigens, which are the things that make you sick. You can develop antibodies for specific toxins and poisons that are endemic to your area, to where you are. So someone that lives up north in the pine deciduous forests, high country, their pathogens are very different than someone who lives down in the swampy plains of Florida. And their antibody responses are more specific for the area they're from versus where we're at now. That is really intelligent. I mean, why would you want to be able to defend against swamp pathogens and things of moist and swampy conditions if you lived up north? You wouldn't be well at all, and you sure wouldn't want to be down from up north into the swamp with these pathogens. So antibodies came along again in frogs. So thank the frog. Okay. Now we get into reptiles and birds. Okay, this is another genre of the animal kingdom. And reptiles actually possess what they call lymphoid tissues. Now, your lymphoid tissue and their immune system features with amphibians and birds. And birds, having evolved from the reptiles, develop specialized adaptations in their immune system, such as increased antibody diversity. Excuse me. So your lymphoid tissue is part of your lymphatic system. When you think of lymph nodes, you think of a group of tissue which is in your body that absorbs lymphatic flow, goes through it. And when you get sick or have an infection, that lymph node, those lymph nodes become swollen and they absorb those poisons and toxins through the lymphatic system. And that is also where we develop these specialized cells that help to heal our body, which I'll go into in a second. But the beginning of lymphoid tissue was in reptiles. Okay, again, thank the frog and the lizard, which we see so many of these days, and also in birds. Birds are more specialized. I think they can travel farther, so they need to be more adapt to more different types of germs and poisons, so they have more a greater amount of antibodies is what birds have. So now, remember, we're still not to we're not with the creatures yet that actually give milk, which is what a mammal is. And mammals came along, you know, after the dinosaurs got extinct. There was some mammals that survived from the great extinction, and those mammals are your ancestors. This is, these were marsupials and things which lived in the ground and were able to adapt, and they have fur, and they carried milk so they could feed their children, in the nest in a hole, because they didn't have to go out and catch insects and bring them back in, or go out and bring food back in. They fed them from their own bodies, which is a huge leap in intelligence and ability to survive. So in mammals, there's a genre called monotremes, and that would be a platypus. Ever seen a platypus? They got that big flat nose. Early mammals, like platypuses, they have immune systems resembling those of modern mammals, with lymphocytes and antibody production. So now the mammal is producing lymphocytes. Now, lymphocytes are your white blood cells, okay? If you were to have an infection somewhere in your body and you did not know, and you were to have your blood work done, they would do a CBC with a differential. That's what it's called, a complete blood count with differential. And that differential is looking for the white blood cell levels, okay? And if your white blood cell count is elevated, it's most indicative of having an infection somewhere, okay? So lymphocytes and antibodies is a much more adaptive response to disease, pathogens, and bacteria. But remember this, you still have all of the other immunities that were created before we were even existed, which began billions of years ago with bacteria and viruses defending and then fighting each other and mutating and surviving, and then forming new mutations as we move through spirit developing matter. And so now we're getting into we went past the animals, and we went past the lizards and the birds, and now we're into the mammals, and we're getting pretty close to you and I, okay? And one of the amazing things about the mammals is now they have these lymphocytes, and these are white blood cells which are messaged and keyed up when we have an infection or we recognize a protein which is non-natural, a protein which the body doesn't recognize as normal. The body will attack it and get rid of it. That's the whole basis of autoimmune diseases. The autoimmune disease is fighting and it's combating this, these proteins it doesn't recognize, and the white blood cells and the immune system just attacks it to the point where it can, it can risk your life over it. So, but it's very important. Now, marsupials, kangaroos, koalas, they developed adaptive immune responses similar to the mammals which have a placenta. Okay. Placenta mammals are, when a baby is born, it comes out in a placental sac, which is a fluid sac that surrounds it. And then when it's born, the mother then licks that off. I was watching a show the other day, and it showed the seal pups. And the mom, when they came out, they looked like they were in a bag of blood or something or other. And then the mother licks that off. That's the placenta. Okay. And their immune response is now becoming very complex with T cells and B cells and helper cells and all the things that you hear about and learned about that are now within us as humans. So human evolution, primates, including humans, have advanced immune systems with T cells, B cells, and antibodies. And what else is very interesting about humans is our social behavior. Let's get this page. Okay. So the social behavior, the evolution of social behavior in primates may have influenced immune system development due to increased pathogen exposure and group living. So when primates live together, they have to survive as a pack, and they developed increased pathogen exposure. They were being exposed to a lot more pathogens because they lived together. And thus they have an increased immune system development. And one of them is something called a pathogen specific adaptations. Primates evolved defenses against pathogens specific to their evolutionary history. So now we have an immune system which is evolving and adapting to specific pathogens that are present here and now for whatever time frame that creature was here. And they were here for hundreds of thousands of years before humans, and they had special pathogens. Now here we are as humans, and what's really amazing is we have different pathogens than your ancestors had, yet our immune systems are handling them every day. They don't want you, I don't want to say they don't, but most people don't understand that. So there is a co-evolution of your humanity and your immune system with pathogens. We need them. They are your friend. They can also be your foe if you allow yourself to get weakened in a weakened state. So an immune system becomes more sophisticated. Pathogens also evolve strategies to evade host defenses. Okay? As you got stronger, they got sneakier to evade your defense. So there's something called an antigenic variation. Some pathogens, like the influenza virus, change their surface proteins to escape immune detection. That's why the influenza virus that circulated last year, and they develop a vaccination towards those proteins, the next year it's changed. It's not going to be effective anymore. We call it mutation, but it's a normal mutation. Doesn't mean it's unhealthy. It's your body is mutating to defend against the new strains. Yet the strain will change every year because it's a battle. They're both trying to get ownership of the kingdom, and we are still at the top of the heap. Okay, against bacteria and viruses and pathogens, we have an immune system which has been developed forever, and the only one that can really screw that immune system up is us, by not taking care of our health and not really looking to understand where true health comes from. Because if we start doing things to destroy our immune systems, broadly across the whole planet, you're going to have a situation where a simple bacteria that wouldn't have even been a problem becomes the most infectious human killing thing out there. So That's why I'm going over this immune system. I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but you got to understand that this is really, really, really important to our survival. There's no nuclear wars can take a person out like having now an immunity to a bacteria. And you can also look back on antibiotic use, why we're resistant to antibiotics. Everybody knows that antibiotics that used to work no longer work today. And when they determine and they look at why they don't work, they find out that the bugs have adapted. They have developed a different mode of operation, so they can defeat your tetracycline or your methicillin or your erythromycin or your streptococcus. It defeats it. Why? Because we're in symbiosis with them. Those germs and those bacteria are essential for our lives. Yet our immune system is there to protect us from those as long as you haven't destroyed your immune system through improper living, improper thoughts, and also, just neglecting the basic tenets of health and life to keep your immune system strong. So, modern understanding, advances in genetics and immunology have allowed us to study the molecular mechanisms underlying immune responses in detail. Comparative genomics have revealed that the shared ancestry of immune genes across species and the adaptive changes that have occurred over time. We're sharing the immune system of Jesus Christ, okay? And Genghis Khan at the same time. It doesn't, this is where these things were perfected, and we're sharing it with the sperm whale, okay, and the jellyfish, and the lowly amoeba. We have their characteristics, and their techniques and their defenses are within us. Can't stress that enough. So, through this evolutionary journey, your immune system has become increasingly complex and specialized, reflecting the constant battle between hosts and pathogens. These adaptations have led to the diverse immune mechanisms seen in different species today, each optimized for their specific environments and their specific challenges. Wow. I hope you understand the gravity of that, what I've just told you, that you have everything within you to heal and to be well. And just like a plant needs nourishment from the soil, it needs water, it needs sunlight, it needs to not be stepped on or broken. And the natural result is a very strong plant that resists pathogens and disease. It's resistant to it because it has those nutrients. And the same thing goes with a human. If you give a human the right nutrition, the right area to grow and to flourish, the right amount of sunlight, believe it or not, a certain amount of gravity. We were born on an earth which has gravity. We need gravity to make our bodies work. We also need sunlight to activate our cells. We get energy from sunlight. We can't hide from it. We can't live in a rock. We'll die from that. Also, fresh water. Water is a solvent, and it's electrolyte, and it brings and it cleanses the tissue. It keeps the electrical charge. If you don't put water in a battery and the cells go dry, there's no battery. It doesn't work. The water is critically important for transferring that electricity from the plate to plate. It's important in you too. Yet, you think drinking coffee is a replacement for water. It's not. You can't clean anything with coffee. There's water in it, but it's locked in to the coffee and to the coloring and to the acidity and all the caffeine. the water is already being utilized to bring in these stuff into your body, and it means less for you to get rid of. So what do I mean by that? Do you know that if you were to suppose you had your dirty dishes this morning after you're cooking breakfast, and all of a sudden you decided that you're going to use the coffee pot, which is filled with black coffee, to wash and to clean the dishes. How effective would it be? Taking black coffee and rinsing it and trying to soap it up and rinsing it again. And you'd be like, man, I can't clean these dishes with this coffee. This is stupid. Yet you think that you're going to clean out the toxins and the sludge and the residual poisons you've been exposed to or put in your body on purpose with the same thing. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Water that's flavored, which is a huge business, is not the same as water. It's lost its solvent. It's lost its ability to become a solvent, and we're dehydrated. I do the tests all the time. Everybody's dehydrated. They're drinking the heck out of, or they think they're getting their electrolytes from a bottle of Gatorade, which is, 36 grams of sugar, and again, if you're not giving yourself live minerals and enzymes from fresh vegetables and low sugar fruits for the most part, if you're not exercising and moving your body to distribute all of the fluids and to help get rid of the toxins, because that's what movement does. It helps to get rid of poisons. And you're not getting enough sleep. We have to sleep. We're very neurologically advanced creatures. We are not able to go without sleep for very long without our systems beginning to shut down. We are way too, evolved compared to a clam or something. We need sleep, and we need recuperation. We need to sometimes change our train of thought, because all work and no play leads to a lowered immune response for the most part. And thus we become susceptible to all these germs and bacteria and things we don't even know exist yet. I mean, one thing humanity has shown us is 200 years ago, they didn't know anything about bacteria or viruses. They had no idea. You look at how they dealt with the plague in the 1800s, the Black Plague, and and they were, they had put these big long masks on that were like really long beaks on it. They thought that they were gonna, prevent the plague from them, and they also thought that maybe the dogs had carried the plague to them. The dogs and the animals, and in London they made a law where they killed all the dogs, all the pets. Now, we've been living with dogs and cats together for millions of, thousands of years. And do you know that when they decided to get rid of all the dogs and cats, do you know what happened in London? The rats overpopulated, because the dogs and the cats were the only thing that were keeping the rat population down. And then they found out that the bubonic plague was carried by the rats. How's that? Was that a good move to do that? And in all these plagues, there were people that did not get the plague, that were resistant to the plague. A huge portion of people were resistant to it. So, your immune system is there for you. It's been developed by an innate intelligence that, if you were to compare the smartest man in the world or woman with all the knowledge that they've gotten from schooling and education and Mensa type personalities, and you were to compare their intelligence with innate intelligence that created everything you see and touch in our lives and our health and our everything, innate intelligence, their level of intelligence would be the grain of sand on the beaches of the world. That's how little we understand. And that, I'm not making that up. I mean, you just think about it. When your mom and dad, God willing, got together and created you, There was 24 chromosomes came from your mother and 24 from your father. And within those chromosomes, those DNAs, they mix together to form one cell called the zygote. Within that one cell, microscopic, you can't even see it without an electron microscope. That cell has all of the knowledge, all the immunities, all the past, all the experience leading up to that day within that cell. Yet we trust somebody who went to Harvard or Yale, who's got a loud mouthpiece and has everybody believing and clapping hands, and they live in a big house and a big home with big, talk to special people to even speak to them like there's some kind of God. I know that you don't. I know you know they're not, but they are treated that way. And even against your own common sense, your own sense of right and wrong, which you know, you'll still make a decision based on, I don't want to, ignorance. It's ignorance if you don't know. It's stupidity if you know and you do it anyway. So I'm not here to tell you yes or no about life and about health and healing. What I want you to know is that your body's ability to heal is far greater than anyone has ever to this point allowed you to believe. I am telling you, you are a super human at the top of the evolutionary scale. You have more skills and more ability to survive, to heal, to be happy, to be healthy, to be able to sleep, to be able to share with others than nobody has ever come before you that has more skills inherent in your genealogy than you do today. And gosh darn it, more people were talking about this and explaining how your immunity was developed when the earth was still spinning around the sun with rocks on it. You'd be like, all right, I'm ready. I got COVID. This is me personally. I don't know if I had COVID, but it sure seemed like it. It was a respiratory thing. I got a little touch of pneumonia. Feel it in my back. It was when everyone else was getting sick, And I treated myself. You remember, I am a chiropractor, and I believe very strongly in getting adjusted because the nervous system can be knocked out of alignment through a fall or an injury, and that can affect how well your body functions. I also know the importance of water, and I've been always drinking lots of fresh water. I also been doing deep breathing exercises called Wim Hof breathing because I want to develop strength in my lungs. I've been doing that for years. And I also utilize vitamins and supplements therapeutically if I get sick. Like I take more vitamin C than normal. I might take zinc and vitamin D. And then I do cleansing. I'll do juice cleansing and food cleansing. I'll also do fasting. These are things I've learned over the years to help me when I ever to get run down. And when somebody said to me, "Are you concerned that you have COVID?" I said, "Man, I've been preparing for this for freaking 58 years. 58 years of my own life, I've been preparing for something like COVID. My genetics, my genealogy has been preparing for it since the beginning of time. I'm ready, man. Let's go." And if it's my turn to go into the ether, to move to the next phase, the next transition, then so be it. I can't control natural selection. And I don't want to live in the world on some kind of breathing apparatus and think that that's health or life. I always think of that Star Trek one where the one captain comes back and he's in that box, he's in that it's just his head. They were able to, his whole body was destroyed, and there he was in that, just his head, and no body and no ability to enjoy. And he was very resentful over it. He would rather have died. Until we're willing to accept natural selection, we're always going to have these problems. I did well it didn't take me out, at least not yet. And I am here to share this message of hope and healing that, man, your immune system is powerful. In fact, every doctor, every pharmacological company, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, they're all trying to copy and determine how your body functions so they can mimic it and sell something similar to it as their business model. And I'm telling you, the guy that lives down the street who doesn't have hardly a house to live in is healthier than some of these people that are popping pills and have the best doctors in the world. And that's just the truth. All right, so I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope I shook you up a little bit. If you'd like a little more information about the immune system, I do have it here. See it? There you go. And I can shoot this out to you. This is just a general talk about the immunity, which is what I've done in the past, and I would do it now, but it would take too long. I just wanted to summarize that, your immune system is fantastic. Please do not ever think that it's not there to help you, but it does require nutrition, rest, recuperation, cleanliness, and positive thoughts and emotions, because we're not, we're too evolved to, we need to worry about things. We need to help others, and worry and fear is one way that we do that. And if we live in those negative emotions, we get very sickened over time. All right. My name is Dr. Rissacker. You're listening to Drtredtv. I hope you enjoy it. If you like it, like, subscribe, share this with other people, and I will see you soon. Love you a lot. Bye bye.